was in the tradition of George Eliot. He was influenced both in his novels and his poetry by Romanticism. Everything was filled with snow, and there was frost, and everything was looking grey in color. So this bird knew something good is going to happen, whereas I, as a human being, failed to understand or failed to realize this happiness. Hello students, I am Anil, Assistant Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today, we are discussing a poem, The Darkling Thrush, prescribed for the BCom 4th semester. In this session, we are going to learn about the poet and the poem and the summary of it, what the poem has in it. About the poet, Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was an English novelist as well as a poet. He was a Victorian realist. He was in the tradition of George Eliot. He was influenced both in his novels and his poetry by Romanticism, including the poetry of William Wordsworth. He was highly critical of much Victorian society. He was criticizing the Victorian society, especially on declining status of rural people in Britain, such as those from his native southwestern England. This is about Thomas Hardy. He was born in 1840 and died in 1928. Now coming to the poem, The Darkling Thrush. The Darkling Thrush, I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey and winter's dregs made desolate the wakening eye of day. So here in this poem, Thomas Hardy, who was born in 1840 and died in 1928, there is this transformation from 19th century to 20th century. So when the time was changing, there was something missing in him, and he was finding that the time is going to become worse. So he has taken this transformation from the 19th century to that of the 20th century. He writes this poem. So he says, I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey and winter's dregs made desolate the wakening eye of day. So here is this man who is explaining a winter's day, and he compares that winter's day to that of his mood. I leant upon a coppice gate. Here, this man is standing and watching that is happening outside his house. It was a winter day, and in this winter, he was leaning on a coppice gate, and he says, when the frost was spectre grey, everything was filled with snow, and there was frost, and everything was looking grey in color. And winter's dregs, the winter's bits and pieces, had made the place unlivable, desolate, and that cloudy time had made the eye of the day, that is sun, weak. So this is how he explains the lifeless time of that period. So he compares that to a winter's day. In Europe, winter is very harsh. Since they are near the northern pole, a winter's day is too harsh, and during that period, no people are seen outside much. So he compares the entire situation to a winter's day. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyre, and all mankind that haunted nay had sought their household fires. So here he says, the tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyre. So all the trees which were there, they had shed their leaves. They were looking like the strings of a broken lyre, the musical instrument. A lyre would look like somewhat like this. These are the strings, and here you stand and you play the music. So these trees are looking like the strings of broken lyre when he looks at those trees. And all mankind that haunted nay had sought their household fires. So during winter, the mankind, human beings, were not seen outside. They were in their houses by the fire. So they were warming themselves up, but the outside world looks as if dead with no life. So you may think of COVID lockdown when people were forced to stay at their homes in order to control the spread of the disease or the infection. So such was the case, but it was cold as well. So that is how he feels the time to be. Moving on, the land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outline. So all the landscape, the features of the lands were looking like something which is dead with no life. His script, the cloud canopy, his wind, the death lament. So his script, the dead land, looks like cloudy canopy filled with fog and air, which creates horror in the viewer. And also the wind, his death lament. The wind which was blowing, it was not so nice to feel. So it was like the death lament, somebody's crying or wailing. The situation was like that. The time period was like that. So he compares that time period to that of a winter's day. Then the ancient pearls of German birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. He says the ancient pearls of German birth, something which would have given birth and a ray of hope, and that germ or seed or pearls, it was shrunken hard and dry. Even the life inside it has been removed from it. And every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. So every spirit on earth, when the poet looks at it, he feels as they are fervorless, without any spirit, without any enthusiasm, without any hope, without any happiness, just like himself. This is how he feels, and he is comparing his mood to that of the entire winter, and he is telling the winter is expressing how actually he is feeling. Moving on, he says, at once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead in a full-hearted, even song of joy illimited. When the poet was thinking these things in mind, suddenly there was a cry. What was that cry? Once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead in a full-hearted, even song of joy illimited. So the poet was standing under a tree. There was something on the twig. The poet, he saw what that was, and it was making noise. It was crying with joy, and he looked at it. An aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. So what was this? A darkling thrush. A darkling thrush was screaming. A darkling thrush was screaming with joy. It was looking very frail, thin, gaunt, weak, and small. But a blast beruffled plume. The bird was looking very ugly. All its feathers were disturbed, and it had chosen to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. The time is glooming. Unhappiness is spreading, but at this point of time, this bird is screaming with its heart full. So little cause for carolings. So he says there is no reason for happy screaming or to talk happily. Of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar on nay around, that I could think there trembled though his happy good night air, some blessed hope where he knew, and I was unaware. So he says, of such ecstatic sound was written on the terrestrial things afar on nay ground. He says, those birds are identifying something good in future. But what about him? And he says that I could think there trembled though his happy good night air, some blessed hope. So with this, with its crying, this bird was able to find a ray of hope in future. It is actually expecting something good in future. And finally he says, whereof he knew, the bird knew about that future, a bright future, whereas I was unaware. I was not aware of the thing, the happiness that is going to come. So through this, the poet thinks that as human being, he failed to hope for the best in future, but the bird, even in that winter, that weather, is capable of hoping for a best future. Here he concludes the poem. The summary of the poem is like this. The transformation of time from one generation to the other. In the 19th century to that of the 20th century, there was political turmoil, there were changes in the government, there were wars, and there were protests against many things, many worldly issues. So at this point of time, the poet feels that everything is becoming hopeless. And he compares that emotion of hopelessness to that of the winter. And finally, he talks about a bird which cries with its heart full and which is happy at that point of time. And he thinks, why is this bird happy? Finally, he realizes that yes, if this is a bad time and the good time is coming too. So this bird knew something good is going to happen, whereas I, as a human being, failed to understand or failed to realize this happiness. So this is how he ends the poem, some blessed hope, whereas he knew and I was unaware. So with this things in mind, I hope you understood the poem. Thomas Hardy has explained his emotions, and also sometimes we feel low and we can think of that hope that we should keep in mind. We should keep hoping for the best time or a brighter time in future. So with this, we will meet in the next session with one more poem. Thank you.